And I thought I would minimize some of the jealousy and insecurity that he had. It was hard for me to justify working. Every audition, every meeting, every script I got was a negotiation or a fight. I had to justify it like as if I was saying, hey, let's have an open relationship. It was, and I thought that would be minimized if I could make him feel more secure. By, if we live together, certainly there would be more security, right? And that was my reasoning.
So you talked about still reading scripts and things. What, if anything, did you do differently in terms of pursuing your acting career?
Well, I've always been really independent, and I've never imagined not working. I've worked from the earliest time I can imagine. I come from, parents who worked until they literally couldn't anymore. I never imagined myself having to explain my job or justify my job, but I did, and I am independent, and I see myself as independent and strong-willed, and I had to bargain. Every time I'd get a script, it would be, I thought you weren't taking another job. I'd always say, are you kidding me? That's crazy. I have to work. I support my family. When I moved out to LA, I'd get a check for, a gig, $600 or something. I'd save half for me, send half to my family. I kept having to justify taking work by saying, I'm supporting my parents, I'm supporting my sister, I'm supporting my family, I have to work. And he would say, you don't have to work, kid. Let me take care of you. My woman doesn't have to work. And that sounds really sweet and really romantic in some way, but it became a real fight. Every time I got a script, it was what kind of, how I was dressing, what kind of behavior I'd have, how did I have a sex scene? And then I started saying, no, I won't take the sex scenes, or, I'll take the part where I don't play, that kind of character. Or then I started minimizing the kinds of kissing scenes that I had, and eventually I had to change the wardrobe that I could have in the movie. I couldn't have a sex scene, but that all, it didn't happen all at once, of course. It was little thing after little thing after little thing, and eventually I found myself pushing as many scripts off my desk as I could, picking the ones that had minimal makeup, dress as conservative as possible, finding ways to minimize the scenes I had where I had a romantic involvement of any kind. It was a constant battle and negotiation.
So let me take you back. Did you, as a result of your discussions with Mr. Depp about moving in, did there come a time that you did move in with him?
Objection leading.
Overruled.
Thank you.
Yes.
Please, and let me ask you this. You've talked about penthouse, we've heard a little bit about penthouse appointments and suites. Could you just explain to the jury the different places that Mr. Depp had in Los Angeles and what they were called, just so we have some context here when we're going through all this?
It's a little confusing, I imagine. He had about, I think, 4 or 5 mansions in this beautiful, border of Beverly Hills and West Hollywood, and they were all on a cul-de-sac, and we called it Sweetser, because that was the name of the street. And there 5 houses, I think 5 houses, it could be 4, all, effectively, he had the whole street. Then he had about 5 penthouses downtown on the same floor of the Eastern Columbia building, which you've heard about, the ECB. And Sweetser was, Johnny's kingdom. One of those houses was like a whole house was his man cave. It was a studio, and it was where he made music and hung out. And we spent some time in there, but that was effectively Johnny's, place. And then there was the downtown places, and they were effectively empty save for some furniture and one of Johnny's friends, Isaac, who you met, and he lived there some point before Johnny and I eventually decided to move in together.
Let me just stop you there. I just want to make sure we're clear. Are we talking about the penthouses or are we talking about suites here? For where
Isaac lived in the penthouses.
Okay.
The rest of them were pretty much empty. And my best friend, who I was very, 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 very close to, went through a breakup, and he very kindly insisted on moving her into this penthouse. And of course, she said no for the first few times, but he insisted and said they were empty and he would love to have her move down there. And he very kindly moved my best friend downtown. Problem is,
Rocky?
Yeah, okay. Rocky Pennington. But the problem is it's like 30, 45 minutes from West Hollywood where my place was, which we call Orange at the time.
Okay. So when did you move into the penthouses?
Shortly after he moved Rocky, my best friend, into the penthouse. So she was in one of these empty-ish apartments, and somewhere around that time, I think it took me some time, actually, but after that, I eventually agreed to move in with him and give up my place, although that made me pretty nervous, to be honest. But we were in this relationship that was very serious, and we were constantly traveling. Also, as another part of it, is we were in LA for a matter of days or weeks. I'd go do a job, he'd go do a job, I'd come back for a photo shoot or a red carpet, go on a location, go visit him on a location. And there was an incredible amount of travel and movement. So we weren't really, again, living the day-to-day that you might normally with a partner, you know, where you have a home and you move in together and you have one home. We didn't have that. It was
okay,
very different.
I'm going to take you to September of 2013. What were you filming at that time? London Fields?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
I was filming London Fields. I just started.
All right. And did there come a time that you became engaged to Mr. Depp?
Well, yeah, it was difficult because in that role was a very difficult role. I mean, every time, every scene that involved sexuality or romance was like, I'd look at that on the page and it felt like I'd feel my gut tighten because I knew it was going to be an issue. But Johnny dropped me off. I gave him the script. I sent him pictures of what I was wearing in my wardrobe fittings. I sent him everything. I shared my script with his team, and the fighting eventually kind of minimized. It was clear I was going to do this job, and I told myself I had to do this job. And Johnny had to go to London, I think, for some pre-production stuff for a movie he was going to do a smaller part in. I think it was called. I think this was Into the Woods, is my best guess. So he dropped me off in London, and when he dropped me off in London, we had a few days at this hotel that we first, consummated our relationship in. It was when we were on the London press tour, and our relationship developed. That was the same hotel, and we were in this same room, which is Johnny liked to be in the same room. And it was really sweet. He got down on one knee and said, I want you to be my girl forever, my woman, my girl. I want you to be the rest of my life. Say yes to me. He said he wanted to spend every day. He promised me that every day when I woke up, that I would wake up and he would make me smile at least once. And that would be his goal. And, I looked into his eyes and I saw my future hope, you know, like blind hope, so in love. It was one of the most, I can't describe that kind of joy, you know. I thought, you know, if we were married, then this is real. This is real. This isn't a thing of, this isn't chaotic. This will change. You know, I had so much hope in that moment. And I just said to him over and over again, are you serious? Are you real? Are you serious? Are you sure? Because he didn't have a ring. So I thought, is this an impulse thing? You know, my experience, Johnny, could be very impulsive. And he said over and over again, be my woman forever. I want you to be my wife, my wife, my wife. I, of course, cried, and we had a wonderful evening, and he left shortly after, and I was, like, the next day I had to go to work, and I couldn't tell anyone, and I wasn't sure. Part of me was worried that he didn't mean it, or, you know, or that he wasn't sure. You know, I just didn't want it to be an impulse thing, so I didn't want to mention it. I want to bring it up. I didn't want to. And I kind of felt, I walked around for a few days like I had butterflies under my skin. And then he brought my dad out to London with my best friends. And my dad told me, you know, Johnny has asked me permission for your hand in marriage. And I felt like the luckiest woman in the world.
So while you were filming London Fields and Johnny had gone back to L.A., what, if any, issues did you have with him on fraternizing with the cast? I'm going to ask, Michelle, can you pull up Defendants Exhibit 188, please?
Your Honor, I'm going to object on hearsay.
Your Honor, I'm going to, let's pull up 188A. I've redacted everything but what Mr. Depp says.
All right, let me
On
just take a look
188A.
at 188A.
That's submission against interest. Do you have that? You don't have it? Give that a minute. While they're working on that, can you tell us what transpired between you and Mr. Depp when you wanted to do something with a cast member?
So, as I said, he came to London for his own work and also dropped me off in London, where I had to be for a few months to film this movie. And he asked me to marry him. He brought my best friends and my dad out. They left. And shortly after they left, my co-star, one of my co-stars, invited me to go to a concert with him and some of the cast to kind of break the ice, and I'd be working with them for the next few months. And I had already, I already knew I couldn't be photographed, even if it was platonic. I couldn't be photographed with men or women that other people could possibly spin as romantic. I had learned that but in January, the hard way. So I asked him permission if I could go to this concert with the cast. And I said, Johnny, that he's my co-star.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Don't tell us what the co-star said. Just tell us what your communication was with Mr. Depp.
Objection, hearsay. Her communications are hearsay.
I'll sustain the objection.
I'm not sure I understand.
If you want to approach this.
Yes.
that if I accepted the invitation and went out to a concert, that the engagement would be off, that the relationship would be off, and that I was foolish, naive, for thinking that people could invite me to a concert in a platonic way. I tried to say that it was fine.
Objection,
that it was,
hearsay.
She's testifying about what Mr. Depp said. I don't understand.
All right, I'll overrule that objection.
Please continue.
Yeah, he said I was foolish and naive, that no one could invite me to. How could I be so dumb to think that somebody could just invite me to a concert? Why would they want to hang out with me? Obviously, it was because they wanted more from me, and that I probably wanted more too. You know, I was basically asking for it. You're going to go backstage. What are you going to say to the band? And then I know how this plays out, and who's the other girl going to be there? And how could you be so stupid? How could you be so foolish? You're more naive. You should be smarter than this. And I apologized. I stayed, that whole evening, I think for a few hours I spent on the phone with him, texting, calling, or talking, hanging up. He'd hang up on me, be upset, and then send me cryptic messages about my foolishness. And, you know, I'm already doing a movie where I play this, character where I was empowered. Like, I read the script and I thought this character was empowered sexually. And by the time I got Johnny's feedback on it, I had been convinced that actually I was just being used, that I was just being used. It was clear that that was all I had to offer, and I was too foolish to see it. And I had
Amber, I'm just going to stop you right there because I'd like you to take a look at Defendants Exhibit 188A.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in front of you? Do you recognize this portion of the text chain between you and Mr. Depp?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and this is on September 9, 2013?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and are these statements Mr. Depp made to you during that evening that you just described to the jury?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of Defendants 188A.
Any objection?
No objection.
All right, 188A in evidence as redacted. Do I have that redaction, or is that something you need to give me?
I think we're going to need to give it to you a hard
Okay.
copy.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Your
Appreciate
Honor. And if I
You can publish.
can draw your attention to it, he first says, I don't want to make anything an issue, baby, but I literally have been on the ground just 14 fucking hours from leaving your side. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then he says, you know what I want, who I am, and where I want to go with us. You know very well what type of fucking man I am, and yet you lay a gauntlet before me that you know is the very species of danger that will always attract me into a very tempting test. What's behind that door? Almost impossible to, I think he meant not take you on. You want me to roll the dice? This sounds more like an aggravated ultimatum than soft words that could help us make both feel better. Don't test me, please. Did he tell you that?
Yes, he
And
did.
what did you understand that to mean?
It was clear. It was a threat that if I wanted to be.
Objection, speculation.
I think she can say what she understood it to mean.
I'll sustain the objection.
Okay. All right. Let's move on then to the filming of Mordecai with Mr. Bettany in October, November 2013. Where did that take place?
In London.
Okay. And what, if any, involvement did you have? Were you there for any part of that filming?
For part of it, I happened to be in London already for the film I was just telling you about. And Johnny came to London shortly after to film his own movies. He did the smaller, I think it was a smaller role in Into the Woods, and then he was filming Mordecai after that. So after I finished my movie, I moved in with him into his house in London, a rented house in London.
Okay. And describe your experiences during that time period with Mr. Depp?
It was really touch and go. He was filming with Paul Bettany, and there were days when he wouldn't come home, or they couldn't get him up out of on set. He'd be asleep in his trailer, sleeping whatever he'd done the night before off. I remember he missed a few days of work that way. It struck me because in my experience in our job, you don't miss work. It doesn't matter how sick you are, you go. You know, it's millions of dollars every single day they're filming, and I had not experienced someone who could effectively just control the set like that, you know, I mean, to that extent. And one day he didn't come home, and I was worried sick. I found out that he was in a hotel room with Paul Bettany.
Objection, hearsay.
Okay. Move forward, because
When he came home, they had to carry him home.
Objection, hearsay.
Did you see them?
I
carry
watched
him?
it.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, please continue.
I watched. Actually, I was shocked that he could do it. One of the security guards carried Johnny like a baby into the house, and I looked at that, and I mean, his boots were hanging over the security guard's arm, who had to negotiate getting through the doorway, carrying Johnny like this. And I watched this. His assistants and the other security guards shaking their head, you know, just shaking their head, acknowledging this is how bad it is. And I remember thinking, this has got to be it. Like, this has got to change. This is it. And he was understandably very, very sick for at least 2 days, is my recollection. And in that 2 days, I had a lot of conversations with this team. I won't say what they were, but I felt at that juncture very encouraged that everybody and myself were on the same page. And I felt encouraged that we were in a new chapter, that Johnny had finally hit rock bottom, and finally he felt like changing for good. And I felt buoyed, you know, supported by these conversations I was having with people that he was close to, that he trusted.
November 2013, did you have any contact with Lily Rose that led to any discussions with Mr. Depp?
Objection, leading.
What, if any, communications did you have with Lily Rose in November 2013?
Objection, calls hearsay, leading.
I'm asking what her connection was. I didn't ask what she
I'm going
said.
to sustain the objection if you want.
Okay. November 2013, what, if any, interaction did you have with Lily Rose without saying anything she said?
Objection, hearsay.
It's interaction, Your Honor. I'm not asking for what she said.
If you can lay a foundation out.
Okay. Did there come a time in November 2013 that you saw Lily Rose?
Yes, they came to stay with us for some time in the winter. Yeah, around November, I believe, 2013.
When you said they, who were you referring to?
Johnny's kids, Jack and Lily Rose.
All right. And was there a particular incident that led to a disagreement with Mr. Depp?
Objection, leading.
Sustained.
What, if any, interaction did you have with Lily Rose that led to an argument with Mr. Depp?
Objection, leading.
That, what, if any?
If we approach from this.
Did you have an argument with Mr. Depp relating to Lily Rose in November 2013?
Yes.
Can you please describe that?
Well, I was, you know, these kids were, I found them to be these beautiful, wildly intelligent little weirdos in the best way. You know, they were, I was falling in love with them. And, you know, they were in my life at that time, a short amount of time, but I loved it, and I started to feel very protective. And, you know, Johnny's sobriety meant that he was there and then he wasn't. And the nature of our lives with the travel and work meant he was there and then he wasn't. And Lily Rose, at some point, had a crush on a, you know.
Objection, hearsay, and lack of foundation.
I'll overrule for them.
Thank you. Please continue.
This argument happened because Johnny was, I didn't agree that this gentleman, it was a famous musician, over the age of 18, spent the night at the house, and I felt protective over Lily Rose and concerned. And naturally, they were not my children. It's not my place, and I understand that. I know it's a sensitive subject, so I understand why Johnny got so upset with me. But that and the introduction of the weed with his daughter, she was so young, I just felt protective. Again, it's not my place. I understand that, and I made him really angry by weighing in on that.
Did there come a time that there was a family engagement gathering?
Well, we celebrated Thanksgiving out in London. The kids were there. There was a stint of sobriety following how sick he got on set with Paul Bettany. After one of his drug binges, and he kind of just came alive again. You know, he even like played a prank on me about having like relapsed when he hadn't relapsed. You know, I started to kind of feel that with the kids being around. I did think that maybe this was it. We were on a good path. Meaning to sobriety, that this was it, and our life was peaceful for a minute. You know, it went back to being wonderful. There were these moments that just felt so wonderful.
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
All right. I'll just sustain the objection.
Okay. Take us to the engagement. There was an engagement party, correct?
Then, yes, come Christmas of 2013, Johnny had rented this beautiful mansion in Malibu on the beach. It was gorgeous. And he brought my family out, and his family was out, obviously, in LA. And we stayed in this rented mansion, and we're all together for the holidays. And one evening, we were going to his mother's house. His mother, who you've heard about, was older and sick, but at home being cared for. And one evening, we're going to have dinner, Christmas dinner there with her around the time of her birthday as well. And my best friend said, "You should."
Objection, hearsay.
Sorry.
Wasn't offered to prove the truth of the matter, but go ahead. Go past that. What did you do?
We went to Betty Sue's house, his mother's house, and Johnny proposed in front of our families in this big, you know, surprise. He surprised me, got down on one knee, and you know, I cried and hugged my mother and hugged his mother, and he gave me this enormous diamond ring, and it was a nice time.
I'm going to take you into January, February 2014. You employed a woman named Kate James, is that correct?
Objection leading.
What, if any, relationship did you have with Kate James?
She was my assistant at the time. I hired her sometime in 2012 and had as minimal contact with her as I possibly could. So.
And why is that?
She was difficult, troubled, and inconsistent. She drank on the job and stuff like that, and her behavior was
Objection relevance.
horrible.
She's already testified. Kate James has testified, and I think the bias, we can.
All right, I'll allow that. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay. Please describe for the jury what job responsibilities Kate had and how you communicated with her and kind of how that worked.
Objection compound.
Overruled.
Thank you.
We had minimal person-to-person interaction because I was hardly ever in LA. If I was there for a few days at a time. And Johnny and I kind of lived in this insular bubble anyway when we were together. But we would send emails, texts, and a lot of voice memos, voice notes. And, you know, if I found that if I said, Kate, you know, you left the car running with your doors open and your kids in the car on the street, you
Objection
need to move
hearsay.
She's not testifying. She's testifying about context.
Sustained objection. Next question.
All right. I'm going to ask you to take a look at Defendants Exhibit 209.
Your Honor, I'm going to object on hearsay grounds.
All right.
It's still hearsay. May we
Ms. Hurd,
approach?
did you? May I lay the foundation first? Ms. Hurd, did you communicate with Kate James by email in the ordinary course of your business?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you to take a look at Defendants 209. Is this a communication that was between you and Kate James that was in the ordinary course of business with her as an employee?
Yes, it is.
So, Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of Defendants Exhibit 209. Business records exception.
Still hearsay, Your Honor.
Business record exception gets the business record, but it's hearsay. If there's hearsay involved inside the business record, there's still objection to hearsay.
Your Honor, the business records exception, I mean, I don't agree. I think that's the point that hearsay can.
Approach.
What, if any, communications did you have with Kate James about your issues with Mr. Depp?
Objection hearsay.
Your Honor, Ms. James has testified.
I'll sustain the objection.
All right, well, we can take that down, Michelle. In the February, I'm going to jump to February, March 2016. What, if any, communications did you have with Mr. Depp about a prenup?
Well, after the engagement, but before the engagement party, I started to feel like it would make, you know, I know that he earned significantly more than me. He's a successful actor. I wanted to eliminate any doubt in his mind and in other people's minds. So I brought it up to him and brought it up to my therapist.
Objection hearsay.
She's just saying that she brought it up to her therapist. She's not saying what she said. But please focus on Mr. Depp, okay?
Of course. Johnny said he would tear it up. He said, if you ever brought one up to me, or if I ever saw one, got my hands on it, I'd tear it up. Only way out of this is death. Only way out of this is death. And I thought it would, like, I didn't care either way, but I did feel that it would eliminate suspicion or doubt, and it would make things easier. And I told him over and over again, you know, are you sure? Are you sure? Maybe we should do this. And one time he said to me, he's like, kid, are you already thinking of how you're getting out of this? Are you already planning to get out of this, kid? You already planning on leaving? It was around the same time as the moving in together conversation. He accused me of having 1 foot out. And they kind of were happening around the same time. You know, I still had my apartment and we're engaged now. He was asking me to redecorate Sweetser, his main house, and kind of move into the ECB building downtown where my best friend was living at this time. While the decorations and the remodeling had been done on Sweetser. And so these conversations were kind of happening about how to build our future together and how we were going to move forward together. And I would have forgotten about the extent that we had those conversations early on in the engagement if it hadn't have been for my therapist's notes.
I'm sorry, if it hadn't been for your what?
If it hadn't been for my therapist's notes, which were taken at the time when I was talking to her about this and my conversations with
Objection
Johnny.
hearsay.
Okay.
I'll sustain the objection.
We'll move on. Okay. Let's take it to March 2014. Did there come a time there was an engagement party?
Yes, so it was March 2014.
Please describe for the jury.
We had an engagement party, and we decided that when we did get married, we'd have a small wedding, you know, something intimate. But, you know, our lives were kind of big. His life was extremely big. And we needed to incorporate, we wanted to have a bigger engagement party than a wedding, you know, and kind of get our guests in, our family, our friends, and have a big event of it, as opposed to making the wedding something that was big. And, you know, so we kind of put it on the engagement party and had a bunch of people, a lot of friends, business acquaintances, a lot of family. I had all of my family friends and my childhood friends come out for it. And I even invited my therapist. It was, you know, a big event.
Okay. And describe what took place at the engagement party.
Well, we walk in together and we took some pictures and said a few hellos, and then Johnny disappeared upstairs in, I guess it's like a coat room or something. It was in a big abandoned building that was rented out for events. And he had disappeared upstairs almost the entire party, I would say. It was kind of came down at the end when we were leaving, and came down once because he was at the time sharing drugs with my dad.
Objection. Speculation. Lack of foundation.
How do you know that he was sharing drugs with your dad?
I was there. I watched it.
Please continue.
My dad at the time was was addicted to the same thing Johnny was. And so my dad had, either my dad ran out or Johnny ran out. I can't recall which of the two ran out, but there was they needed more, of course, and had to leave the party. My dad actually left with Johnny's security to go get more drugs from
Objection.
West
Calls for
Hollywood.
speculation.
How do you know that?
They told me.
Hearsay.
Sustain the objection.
Okay.
And they left to go whatever, and then they came back with drugs, and everything was okay in terms of the withdrawal symptom of I don't know what you call it at that point, but he still stayed upstairs. And
Are you referring to Mr. Depp?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Please
So
continue.
shortly after that, I tried to get Johnny to come downstairs, and he just snapped at me, just verbally told me to shut the fuck up. And I remember talking to my mom about the irony of it.
Okay.
We were at an engagement party, but that was pretty much it for the engagement party. And I went downstairs and entertained guests and smiled and took pictures and put on a face and, went about my evening.
All right. I'll take you to May 2014, the Met Gala. Could you please tell the jury what a Met Gala is and what's involved in that?
Objection. Compound.
Overruled.
Met Gala is a big event, annual event, celebrity event in New York. It's a fashion event, but it's just a major red carpet event. And you have to be invited, and it's kind of a thing, and we were invited that year. And I had already gone for the previous year or two, and this year we were going to go together. And at some point in the evening, we're sitting across the table, and Johnny starts asking me about this woman. He thought I was looking at this woman in a sexual way, and I kind of turned it around on him and said that exact same
Objection. Hearsay.
All right.
It's context, Your Honor. This is
I'll
context.
sustain the objection.
Okay. Just say what Mr. Depp said then. I guess you can't tell us what you said to him.
Okay. He was accusing me of flirting, and that's how the argument started. I don't recall what other accusations I was fielding at that moment, but typically in my experience with him, it wasn't just one. So you'd make a point, and then he would go on to a different accusation. But I remember that what started it is this accusation that I had been flirting at this event. We get back to the hotel room, and Johnny shoves me and kind of grabs me by the collarbone area, like not really my neck, but top of my neck, above my collarbone, below my neck. I think at that point, when we were still in the living room, I shoved him back, but I don't really recall too many specifics. I remember he threw a bottle at me. It missed me, but it broke the chandelier. And at some point, I remember maybe this was the shove that I was talking about, but at some point, Johnny and I are in a struggle in the living room, and he kind of like shoves me down on the sofa, and I get up, and I'm trying to get him off of me, and it's just stronger than me. I don't know how else to describe it. And at some point, he just whacks me in the face. And I had not, at the time, been, I I think that was the first time I was like, is this a broken nose? At the time, I was unsure what that feeling was, but I suspected I had a broken nose. And other than that, I was relatively unscathed. But I remember my nose being swollen, discolored, red. And I took a picture of my face at some point and made a joke about it to my friend about how bad I looked compared to how the red
Objection,
carpet.
hearsay.
It wasn't offered to prove the truth of the matter.
So I'll sustain the objection.
Okay. Okay. Just don't say what you told a friend. Okay. Okay. Let's take you to the Adderall Diaries. When did you start filming the Adderall Diaries?
Believe May. I filmed another movie in New York, March, April, May. I went straight from that movie to another movie, an independent film with James Franco. The one I had previously shot was with Christopher Walken. That's right. Okay, so I went from one to the other and saw Johnny in these, in between, like if I got a long weekend or, I'd fly home to be with him and then fly back. It was kind of like that.
Fly back from where? Where were you filming those?
In New York.
Okay. And where was Mr. Depp at that time?
Johnny was in LA at the time and then eventually went on location for his movie, Black Mass, in Boston.
So you were in New York and Mr. Depp was in Boston at some point?
Eventually, by May 2014. That's it.
All right. And what, if any, discussions or arguments did you have with Mr. Depp relating to James Franco in that time frame of May 2014?
It's a nightmare. I wanted to do this independent film. I liked the story. I liked the character. I told him I'm not going to wear makeup in the thing.
Objection, hearsay.
Apparently,
Ms. Beater, if you could approach, please.
so tell the jury what Mr. Depp said.
He was mad at me for taking the job with James Franco. He hated James Franco, and was already accusing me of kind of secretly having a thing with him in my past since we had done Pineapple Express together.
Okay. So I'm going to take you to the Boston plane incident. We've heard about that earlier, May 24. Can you please describe for the jury what took place on May 24 relating to the plane incident?
Well, I had spoken to Johnny, he's in Boston, I'm in New York, and I spoke to him he had already been upset with me and accused me in like many arguments about not telling him about scenes that I had. If I had a kissing scene, any sort of romantic scene, and I wasn't explicit about what I was going to do, then I was accused of having withheld information and hiding it from him. So I didn't want the fight, of course. I didn't want the argument, but I had to kind of eggshell tiptoe around how to tell him when I had any sort of scene like that. And I did tell him in this occasion.
Objection, hearsay.
We need to stay with what Mr. Depp said, okay?
Okay, so he was upset with me, but he didn't sound coherent so much on the phone. He was yelling at me about how could you tell me this? How could you tell me this when I'm filming, when I have this scene that I'm doing? How could you tell me this when I'm working? Obviously, I couldn't tell him any other time because we were both filming, and I told him as soon as it was relevant, but he kept saying, how could you tell me this? How could you just tell me this? And it was like I had told him I was having an affair or something, you know, it was that angry at me. But he kind of started to sound less connected to reality as these like arguments would happen on the phone. This is in one day. Eventually, he hangs up on me in the conversation, screaming at me. I talked to his assistants. I won't say what they said, but I had conversations and felt encouraged that I could continue on with the plan, which was for me to get on the plane, go to Boston, pick him up, and we would go back to LA for his daughter's birthday. I was nervous because the conversation I had with him, and he was so upset with me on that conversation, but I figured I assumed he had passed out and that he would have been kind of sobered up the next day, assuming that the work would mean that he felt pressured to kind of pull it together. And I get on the plane. He sent the plane, so I assumed he's not that mad at me. He's over it. We're moving on. He's sobered up. There had been a lot of talk about a sober plan, like a full detox, a full recovery, a doctor, a whole plan. You know, there were talks of that following what had happened in London. So I was feeling like, okay, well, maybe we're here. And I get on the plane. It touches down and the SUV pulls up and it sits on the tarmac for a very long time. He knows I'm on the plane waiting for him. So I kind of started to anticipate that things weren't as I hoped, meaning that he was sober and had slept it off. And I'm sitting on the plane for a very long time waiting for him, and he finally opens the door, and I see him get out of the SUV, and I can guess by how he's moving, how he's walking. I didn't realize at the time I had already become really sensitive to these little changes because my life changed depending on what he was on. And he gets on the plane, and I just knew in every cell of my body something was wrong. And he comes straight up to me, doesn't say anything to me, but is looking at me. He's got these glasses on, and he takes them off in this kind of aggressive manner and sits down across from me, not in the usual spot. We'd kind of have our places on his plane, you know, where you get used to sitting. And I remember I got up and moved to accommodate him getting by so he could sit in the normal seat as per usual. He didn't. He sat across from me. At some point, and I don't really remember the exact sequence of it, we take off, and at some point he's asking me what's wrong with me. What do I have? Do I have something to tell him? Do I have something to tell him? You want to talk to me about your day yesterday? And then it gets, I already know that he's drunk. I already know he's using, he reeks of weed and alcohol. I mean, his breath smelled so bad, and I could anticipate that there was a no-win situation here. There was no me talking myself out of this or talking him down or any, a lot of my arguments and my involvement in them are me trying to diffuse by explaining or
Objection, non-responsive.
She's telling the story, Your Honor.
I'll sustain an objection as part. Go ahead. Okay.
So he is asking me questions, and I know to not engage. I was polite. I made sure to answer minimal amount of, the minimal amount that I could. I moved slowly. I was trying to be polite, but not engage because there was no win. And he kept going, kept asking me. Eventually went from, do you have something to tell me, to, you want to tell me how much you liked it? Tell me, did he slip a tongue? It got worse and worse, just more. It went from asking me about how my kissing scene went or how the sex scene went to asking me what James Franco had done in the scene, to being really explicit about my body. He was talking about he was saying really disgusting things about my body, about how I liked it, how I responded, and then he started just straight up taunting me. I know you liked it. He called me a go-getter. He called me a slut in front, and also this is happening with security and his assistants on the plane. And I remember I felt I struggle to be able to tell you how embarrassed I was, because he was speaking to me in front of people in this way, asking me if I liked it and if I was wet, and why I wasn't looking at him, and that was proof I wasn't looking at him. That was proof that I was asking for. Did I ask James to do this and this to me? And how about if he does those things to me? Insert sexually explicit descriptions of what he accused me of wanting or deserving. And I, at some point in this, get up and move to the front of the plane. And I remember getting up so slowly. I didn't want to aggravate him. I didn't want to give him any excuse to pounce on. I didn't want to upset him. I didn't want him to flip a switch and get worse. I just remember very slow movements, and I slowly get up and move to the front of the plane, and he starts throwing things at me. Ice cubes, utensils. He's calling me a go-getter, and then an embarrassment, talking about what an embarrassment I am. I don't know how many times I moved seats. I wish I did. I remember moving more than once, and Johnny came to me each time, not the other way around. He sits down in front of me at one point, and because I'm not answering him, I was looking out of the window, and he slaps my face. And his friend is in our proximity. And it didn't hurt my face. It just felt embarrassed. Did he do that to me in front of people? It was the first time that anything like that had happened in front of somebody. I got up to move again, and he's just taunting me, having a laugh, screaming, and then just straight up mean, calling me names. And it was oscillating between those things. And I get up slowly again, and I just resolve to just sit the rest of the time up at the front of the plane. And as I get up, he kind of kicks the swivel chair into my hip, or kind of just hits me. And I look at him, and he asks me, what are you going to do about it? I just stared at him. I just stared at him and wanted him to see me. I wanted to get through to him. Didn't feel there was it felt like there was a blackness in his eyes. I wanted to look at him. I wanted him to see me. It didn't even feel like him. And as I'm walking away, slowly, trying not to be, I was being very deliberate about my movements, wasn't saying anything, I wasn't engaging. I am walking away from him slowly, and he tells me to hurry the fuck up. Hurry up. And I just look at him one more time, wanting to penetrate the monster to see the man that I love underneath that. The man I loved. And he tells me to hurry up again. And I pull my gaze away from him. I walk away from him. My back is turned to him, and I feel this boot in my back. He just kicked me in the back. I fell to the floor. I caught myself on the floor, and I just felt like I was looking at the floor of the plane felt like a long time. And I thought to myself, I don't know what to do. I can't believe did he just kick me? No one said anything. No one did anything. It was like you could hear a pin drop on that plane. You could feel the tension, but no one did anything. And I just remember feeling so embarrassed. I felt so embarrassed that he could kick me to the ground in front of people. And more embarrassing, I didn't know what to do about it. I got up and I walked to the front of the plane. I sat down and I just looked out of the window. And Jerry Judge Security and my friend both kind of under their breath asked me, "Are you okay?"
Objection, hearsay.
I spent the rest of the time looking out of the window.
Sustain the objection.
And
Did there come a time that you tape recorded Mr. Depp on this plane?
I want to sit here and say that I was telling myself I needed to leave him. But as he got worse, he demanded the oxygen tank from the flight attendant, excuse me. And he continued to drink and then eventually started howling like an animal and passed out in the bathroom with the door locked. And was howling, and I at some point pushed record on my phone because there was that 5% part of me.
Objection, non-responsive.
I don't think it's non-responsive. She's explaining what led up to her tape recording him and why. I mean, I can ask her,
Okay.
will that solve it?
All right.
Why did you tape record him?
Because I knew that Johnny wouldn't remember what he had done. I knew he would not remember. And if
Calls for speculation.
She can say why she did it and what she thought.
But that last part called for speculation. I'll sustain the
Don't
objection.
say, I knew. Why did you tape record?
in my experience, when Johnny was that inebriated, he would not remember what he had done.
Calls for speculation.
How can that call for speculation?
I'll sustain the objection.
All right, let's go to Defendants 221. And I'm going to play 3 different parts for it.
Your Honor,
And if
may
we
we
can-
approach, please?
Okay.
So we're going to start with 221, and we're going to call it A, and that'll be 0 through 1 minute.
Okay, sure.
With the first one with 0 to 1 minute. And can we turn up the volume just, I mean, there's part of it that the noise of the airplane is a little bit loud, but to be able to pick up the noise.
Keep an eye
And then the second one is from 2:50 to 3:20, 30 seconds.
You, 221 is in evidence. All of 221 is already in evidence.
So may I play the third one then, and then we
Yes.
can take the break?
Yes.
Thank
can
you.
play-
That would be at
You can play
9.
all of it if you'd like. That's fine, thank
I
you.
think that'll torture the jury if I do that, Your Honor. 9:30 to 10, just 30 seconds more.
Must have this for Canadian case he gets sick.
All right, and you can be changing gears after that, or do you have any more questions for this issue?
No, I think this would be fine
Okay,
for a break.
all right. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and take our morning break then. Just do not do any outside research and don't discuss the case with anybody. All right, thank you. And again, ma'am, since you're still testifying, don't discuss your testimony with anybody at this point, okay? All right, so let's just come back at, let's make it 11:42. All right, 11:42.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, we ready for the jury?
May we approach?
Okay, sure. All right, we ready for the jury then?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, see your next question.
Thank you, Your Honor. Amber, following the plane ride, what did you do once you arrived, once you landed in L.A.?
I called for a cab, a car to pick me up, met me at the private airport, and I left. I got straight off the plane as soon as we touched down. Johnny had been saying what he would do to me once we got on the ground, and I didn't know how long this cycle would last, so I wanted to just get out of there. I went to a hotel and called my friends to join me, which was my coping strategy at the time.
Okay. I'm going to ask you to take a look at Defendants 204. Did you reach out to...
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay and leading.
Your Honor, I would direct Your Honor's attention to the first one in blue and the third one in blue, and I would say present sense impression and the state of mind at that time.
All right, you want to approach?
Yes. All right, let's go to 205. Defendants 205. And this is a communication between you and Rocky Pennington, your best friend, is that correct?
That's correct.
Objection, hearsay.
Needs to be redacted. So 205 with redactions is in evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. May we publish to the jury? Thank you.
It is.
So, Rocky on this is Rocky Pennington, your best friend, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And when did you send this communication to Rocky?
Once I had touched down in LA,
Okay. And you said, I'm not good. What did you mean by that?
that I needed help, that I was scared. I was scared of what had just happened to me. I was scared of what was going to happen to me. I was scared if I left him. I was scared if I didn't. And I needed help. I just needed support. And I didn't feel safe going home. I still had my place in Orange. He had keys. I was scared.
Did you text your mother and your father about this incident?
Objection, hearsay.
If you want to.
What, if any, communication did you have with your mother or your father following this incident?
Objection, hearsay.
Sustain that objection.
Let's go to Defendants 222, and Your Honor, I suspect we're going to be back up at the
All right, you
bench
want
on this
to
one.
approach? That's fine. Thank you.
what, if any, communications did you have with Kate James following the Boston plane incident?
Objection, hearsay.
Your Honor, if we go to 224.
Okay. 224.
My argument would be business records exception.
All right, you want to come forward? We can do it.
So what, if anything, did you do the evening of the 24th of May?
I reached out to friends and family, asked for support,
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
and surrounded myself with them with that.
What, if anything, did you do for Lily Rose's birthday?
That's why we had gone back to LA. Johnny was sick after having passed out on the plane. So I took her to dinner. We went to Benihana's. It was, again, put on my smile, took her out, tried to make her feel loved, and celebrated for her birthday. And then I booked a flight out to New York to go back to New York, obviously without Johnny.
I'm going to ask you to now turn to 225. And Your Honor, I'm going to be referring to the last two blue spots on that page with the state of mind. Mental condition.
All right.
It doesn't, it's still hearsay, Your Honor. May we approach?
Yeah, you want to approach? I just want-
I'm going to ask you to turn now to 228.
Your Honor, we're going to object on hearsay.
First line, Your Honor,
Okay.
is all I understand in Your Honor's ruling, but I think.
All right. If you want to come forward, that's fine.
So tell us please tell the jury what you did then over that night, the next day, and at the hotel.
I cried a lot, tried to surround myself with my friends, and resolved to leave him. I felt powerless. Nothing I did made a difference. You know, on the plane, I was so careful.
Objection, non-responsive.
Please just tell us what you did, and you can tell how you feel, but don't go backwards, okay?
I resolved, tried to, the strength to commit to leaving him. I knew I had to. I knew nothing else would make a difference. So I got myself back to LA. New York. And started going to Al-Anon meetings every day. It's a support group for people who love addicts and alcoholics.
What, if any, communications did you have with Stephen Deuters?
Objection, hearsay.
Your Honor, let me ask it this way. What, if any, communications did you have with Mr. Deuters communicating on behalf of Mr. Depp?
Objection, hearsay.
I would say agency on that, Your Honor.
You have to lay a foundation for that.
Okay. All right, let's go to 229A. And could you, without saying what the content is, can you tell us who this text message is with?
Johnny's assistant.
What's his name?
His name is Stephen Deuters.
Okay. And what, if any, communication were you having with him following the Boston plane incident?
Objection, hearsay. May we approach?
All right, Ms. Means.
Did you communicate at all with Mr. Depp in the days following the Boston plane incident?
Yes, I did.
Please tell the jury about those communications.
I heard from him directly. I also heard from him through his assistants who were texting for him.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
I'll sustain the objection.
You're not allowed to testify about the text messages with his assistant, but can you tell the jury about your communications with Mr. Depp?
Okay. It's kind of confusing because he was texting through them.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the objection. I'll strike that from the record, and you'll disregard that testimony. Please answer the question.
Just confine it to the communications you had with Mr. Depp, please.
That he was sorry and told me that he was in a blackout. He didn't remember everything, but what he did remember, he was ashamed of. He begged me to forgive him, said he understood and forgave me if I never wanted to speak to him again. He texted me at one point and then I didn't respond right away, and he texted me again that he understood that I had made my decision to move on and good luck, and I was better for it, and then continued to contact me. I spoke to him when I was in New York on the phone, and he said that he was he had a chip, or that he was going to meetings, that he I think at the time mentioned another celebrity that was kind of advising him on sobriety, or not advising him, but, you know, encouraging him. And he was saying, well, look, you know, me and this person, we even went to a meeting. I've got 3 days sober, 4 days sober. And that was the last time. The monster will never come back. Monster will never come back. And because it felt like such a different, it felt so much worse than it had ever been before. And because I had, you know, I went to New York and I was trying to get my strength to leave him, I actually thought that it kind of would be the turning point. I thought I had effectively...
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
Overruled. Oh,
Thank you. Go ahead. Please continue.
I thought things would change.
Okay. Did you draft any kind of email to Mr. Depp to express your emotions and how you felt about all this?
Objection, hearsay.
Well, let's go, I'll lay the foundation, Your Honor. Let's go to Defendants 239.
239.
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor.
And I would say both present sense impression and definitely state of mind, Your Honor.
I'll sustain the objection.
All right. So did you ultimately communicate to Mr. Depp what you first drafted up in an email without saying anything about what's in the email?
That calls for hearsay, Your Honor.
I'm just asking if she did.
Not what she said.
Correct.
Okay. Overruled.
Did you communicate to Mr. Depp what you had drafted in the email? And you don't get to say what you said.
Yes.
Okay. And what, if any, response did Mr. Depp have to your sending that email to him?
He came to New York to fight for the relationship, for me, to prove that he was sober and he was committed to changing. I believed he was embarrassed and sorry. He said he was, and I believed him. So I took him back, or I got back with him on the condition that he would uphold his promise to do the treatment, to do the full detox, clean up, and never go back.
So I'm going to take you now up to the June through August 2014 time frame. And I think you testified earlier, and others have as well, that Mr. Depp brought in Dr. Kipper and his group, correct?
Yes, he did.
Could you please describe for the jury what those next few months were like?
All of a sudden, this doctor gets brought on that we had been talking about. I had heard this name before. And all of a sudden, this doctor, Dr. Kipper, who apparently wrote a book on addiction and was this doctor was going to be the solution, the cure, you know, and he got brought on board, and all of a sudden the plan was that this team would be involved in Johnny's recovery. So it felt real, it felt serious, I felt like protected. You know, I had already by this point heard a million times, it seems like, promises to get clean and sober, but this felt like a change. And they were going to come to Boston and start working with Johnny, and the plan was to keep Johnny on the same level of drugs that he was on since he was filming. They needed him to finish filming the movie, so he was going to be maintained with his with prescription pills, including the painkillers. And the plan was he would obviously abstain from alcohol completely and all other drugs like weed and coke. And then when he finished filming, the plan was to do
Objection,
the
Your
full
Honor,
detox.
hearsay. And lack of foundation.
I don't understand what the objection, I don't think it is. I think she was just explaining the context there. I don't think she was saying
Well, we
what
could lay a
somebody's.
foundation how she knew, but it's fine.
How did you know that?
I was involved in the conversations
Okay. Please
with the
continue.
doctors and with his sister.
Objection,
And
Your Honor,
nurse.
that's still hearsay.
All right, I'll
Okay,
sustain the
that-
objection.
That part is. So what happened next? As a result of these communications, without saying what the communications were?
A nurse came to Boston where Johnny was. I just would come for short periods of time in between, on weekends from filming until I wrapped my movie, which I did, I think in May, if I am not mistaken. And then I went to Boston and I was there and saw a nurse was flown out to Boston, Debbie Lloyd, and I believe Kipper came out too. And they put Johnny on a bunch of new medications, which they shared with me, told me about.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Well, we have to be careful about what other people told you, okay? But you can testify to what you know, okay? So what happened then?
I saw his medications change. I know the amount that Johnny told them he was on was so that they could maintain him for the filming, meaning not make a drastic change in the amount of painkillers he was taking. But his behavior, his whole personality changed drastically. He would be speaking to me, and at the time I was staying in Boston with him, having wrapped my movie, and he would, in mid-sentence, mid-word, fall asleep. One time I was sitting across from him, and he would come in and out of sleep, being awake, or completely what appeared to be asleep while talking to me, and he had a cigarette in his hand, and, Johnny constantly smoked, and he just sat the cigarette, as he fell asleep, while speaking, down on his leg. They're hand-rolled cigarettes. They don't stay lit very long, thankfully, but, it was things like that, and I didn't understand it. Even though I had experience with drug use in my family, I hadn't seen anything like this, and it was so dramatic, the change, that I was trying to figure out with the nurses and doctors what happened, what changed, how we could explain the change and what medications were causing it. I knew there were new medications involved, so, I was constantly worried and in communication, and Johnny's behavior got worse and worse, more of this passing out, nodding off, waking up in the middle of the night, screaming, waking up in the middle of the night, sometimes crying, and the emotions would change from one to the next, like by the second. I remember we were on a long weekend when he was filming in Boston, and we went to this like a resort retreat hotel, and you know, he was just bawling. You know, it broke my heart. There was just a lot of changes, and I really didn't know. I felt so bad for him, and I thought maybe it was just what Kipper had introduced into the regime, the medications. But what I found out in that time is that he was taking about double the amount.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Was this
No,
your observation?
I saw it.
Okay, overruled.
Thank you. Please continue.
It was taking about double the amount that he told them was his normal when he started the process with the doctors. So after a few, you know, it's, I think, months of going, what is wrong? And, you know, turning him over when he vomited at night or checking his pulse. There were, all of a sudden, when I realized the amount was about double, I realized then he had been lying to them and me about the amount so that he could get extra high before he had a detox. But that I can't that I was so, it was such an agonizing weeks, months. It was so agonizing. I don't know how long it lasted, but I was so concerned for this person, and he had just been doubling up his meds because he didn't.
So, Michelle, can you pull up 1092, Defendants Exhibit 1092? Amber, did you take this picture of Mr. Depp?
I did.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of Defendants Exhibit 1092.
All right, any objection?
No objection.
All right, 1092 in evidence. You can publish. Thank you.
And can you describe what's depicted here and why you took this picture?
This was during that time when the prescriptions that he was on in the doubling up of the opiates got so bad that he was like this just throughout the day, off and on, and then he would take Adderall and he'd be really animated and ready to go, and then it would be this again, and it was so erratic and so it changed so quickly, and I naively now really did not understand what was going on. I deeply cared about this human's well-being.
All right.
And it was very confusing and scary.
So did there come a time then that Mr. Depp went into detox for Roxycodines or whatever they're called?
Yes, when he finished filming, the plan was to do the detox, and that's what we did.
And when was that?
That would have been early August of 2014. I believe we left. We were there for, I think, a week to 10 days, 8th through the 18th, more or less.
And we've heard some testimony about this, but can you please describe for the jury what took place during this detox on the Bahama Islands in August 2014?
It was, for the first few days, okay, peaceful. The nurse, and then later nurse and doctor were staying on a different part of the island, a few minutes drive by ATV, like 10, 15 minute, by one of those ATV vehicles. But we communicated via walkie-talkie and occasionally through text. And it was okay at first, and then the behavior, then it just really wasn't okay. It was up, down, he'd be mad at me. Then he was wanting a hug. He cried a lot, and then he, wanted to have sex a lot, which is just not like Johnny at all. And it was just like that. It was just up, down, mood, and it was like I felt like I constantly was catering to the mood, that whatever he was going through at the time. I was just trying to adapt and kind of roll with it, and provide support. I was taking his blood pressure. I was on a schedule and constant communication with the nurses about delivering the meds, giving him his meds at a certain time. I was just trying to take care of him. And a few days in, you know, I guess the effects of the detox really started to change. And it went from this like erratic behavior up and down to just really down or mad. He would burst into anger at me, yelling at me. I crossed the table. I walked away from it at the table. I crossed the table in a certain way, and he screamed at me about that and tried to overturn this table. Luckily, it was bolted down to the deck, but I remember him shaking it and screaming. And at a different point, he was really calm and sweet and thanking me. And then another, you know, he looked like he was balancing out, and we had a conversation, and he was saying he wanted to quit the detox, and he couldn't do it anymore. And I was trying to find the language to encourage him. You know, I was trying to remind him how much he wanted that, how much he had told me he wanted that, how much I was reminding him, he told me all the time, I saved his life, and he wouldn't be doing this without me. And I was telling him these things, and at one point in our conversations, I told him about how...
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Please try to continue without what you said, please.
I said something to him, and he got so angry at me, he slapped me across the face. But he did it, like, while crying. It was the weirdest thing. He was crying, saying no woman had ever embarrassed him like that. No woman had ever made him feel like that. I heard that for the rest of the trip, too, just on repeat. And I felt bad. I feel bad. Still feel bad. But, you know, I didn't want to make him feel embarrassed. That's not what I wanted to do. It just was in over my head. I don't know how to detox someone. You know, I don't know how to help them through that. And I shouldn't have been there. You know, I don't.
Why were you there?
Because he asked me to. And I didn't know that was a phenomenally dumb idea. I don't know why why the doctors and nurses didn't tell me not to. I had no idea what that was going to look like or be like. And it was hell. You know, we're on an island. I'm trying to take care of him, and he was hallucinating. And
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
Overruled.
Screaming at me for things that I said when I didn't say any. I hadn't said anything. I would tell him, Johnny.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
I think in the context, Your Honor, it's not offered.
What's it for?
It's just telling the context of.
I'll sustain the objection. Thank you.
Please continue and just say what he says and what he did and what your observations were.
He was accusing me of having a man in the house with me. We were in a single, you know, in a cabin. It's basically one room with a closet and a bathroom. I mean, there's nowhere to hide, really. I mean, there's a closet and a bathroom. And he, at one point, told me that I was hiding somebody in the house. Another point, he was communicating with someone not in the room. It would yell at me and then yell at someone else. It wasn't there. And I tried to ask for what I should do. I didn't know what to do. It was terrifying and strange. The whole week was...
So after you left Bahamas and finished with the detox there, where did you go from there?
We, meaning Debbie Lloyd, Dr. Kipper, and I and Johnny, we flew back to LA, and he was going back and forth between saying he wasn't going to continue to, he was committed, it was back and forth. Everything was up, down, erratic, like changing every second. And we got to LA, and Debbie and Kipper communicated with me. I won't say what they said, but I decided it would be probably in everyone's best interest if I went away to a hotel. Johnny put me up in this room in this hotel while he finished the process of detox in LA, and I had my friends out with my girlfriends there to support me as per usual.
So Michelle, can you pull up 272, please? And after you both returned to LA, did Mr. Depp communicate with you by text while you were apart, while he was finishing the detox?
Yes, he did.
Your Honor, I'd like to move the admission of 272.
Any
Defendants
objection?
Yes, Your Honor, to the first message. Excuse me, Your Honor, to the
You
second.
mean the response?
Right.
Okay.
Just present sense of impression, but I'm understanding Your Honor's
Yeah.
rulings on that.
Okay.
So
If you want to redact it,
can we
that's fine.
redact that second message? All right, Your Honor,
All right. Any objection to 272 redacted?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
All right, 272 is in evidence, and we will publish.
and Amber, I'm going to show you now what is Defendants Exhibit 272, and this is on August 20, 2014. It's a text message from Mr. Depp to you. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And just so that we can highlight here, he's calling you, he says, just to let you know that I'm fine, my angel. I miss you, of course, but this was the right thing to do to speed up the process. I love you more than life. Yours, Steve. Do you see that?
I do.
So what, if any, expressions was Mr. Depp giving you at this point that he was angry with you ever having to help participate with the detox or to be on the island or anything along that line?
Objection, form, compound.
I'll allow it, but just for trying to keep the record clear, 272 has already been entered into evidence without that redactions, and there wasn't any objection. So I would wish if I could have both sides to keep track of their evidence. It's not my job to keep this.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just got a note to that effect. So
Okay, so 272 is in evidence without, you can clear the redaction and publish it. It's really the party's responsibility to take care of the record, not mine.
my apologies on that one, Your Honor. All right.
All right, and I overruled the objection, so she can answer the question.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm sorry, can you remind me what the question was?
Yes,
That's fair.
that's fair. I said, what, if anything, did Mr. Depp say about that you were torturing him on the island and he didn't want you there?
Very confusing for me to hear that because even though he was hallucinating and angry at me at various moments when he would have these kind of episodes, I did nothing but try to take care of him. I'm not a nurse. I did my best to support him. And he thanked me. He thanked my mom. He thanked my dad. And told me, of course, I saved his life. That he wouldn't be able to make this change without me. And that this process was horrible and hard on him and us and me. But that he was so thankful that I was there for him.
Okay, we can take this down now, Michelle, thank you. And I'm going to take you up to September, October of 2014. Do you remember filming Magic Mike 2 in that time frame?
Yes, I do.
And what, if any, connections did you have with Mr. Depp in that time frame?
Well, I bargained with him about me doing the role. He told me he would call the actors. It was a mostly male cast. But I bargained with him.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Don't say what you said, just say what he said, okay?
He reluctantly kind of agreed to me working on this movie or taking a job. He was filming a different movie in London at the time. I wasn't going to play a sexualized character. I wore no makeup or minimal makeup in the movie. No sexy clothing. No kissing scenes. No sex scenes. So I went and did that film in October of 2014 in Georgia while he finished his movie in London. And then at some point he came out to pick me up in Georgia and was there for my last day or two of filming.
I'm going to ask you to turn to, Michelle, can you bring up 310, please? Defendants 310. Did you have communications with Mr. Depp about auditioning for another role in this time frame?
Objection, Your Honor. I'm going to object to the exhibit. That's hearsay.
I'm not sure who's in the text exchange.
It is a text exchange, Your Honor, so, but the green is Mr. Depp. And the one I'm most focused on is on the second page, Your Honor, the top.
The green bubble on the second page?
Yes.
All right, so just that text?
Based on Your Honor's rulings, yes.
Any objection to that text?
No, thank you, Your
Okay,
Honor.
if we can get that redacted.
And while that's being redacted, Amber, let me ask you, what, if any, anything was Mr. Depp saying to you in this time frame, we're talking November 2014, about you not working anymore or not taking on any more work or auditioning?
Objection, Your Honor. Compound.
They're all the
And
same
leading.
subset.
Overruled, I'll allow it.
Thank you.
Johnny was angry with me for working. I had finished my job and I needed to eventually find another job, meaning a movie, to work on, and he was furious at me.
Carefully crafted with Valencia orange peel, Blue Moon is one of a kind. Something this unique could hang in a gallery, but it looks best in our signature glass. Blue Moon, one of a kind, every time.
Keep tabs on me and report to Dr. Kipper, who reported everything to Johnny.
Objection, hearsay. Calls for speculation.
I'll sustain the objection.
Okay. Okay. So tell us about the couples therapy in November 2014.
So Dr. Cowan, this man who is friends with Kipper, who's treating me, agreed to see Johnny and I together. And I don't know how many minutes of that went on before Johnny stormed out, knocked something off the table on his way out, and rolled a joint in the bathroom before storming out of the office, slamming the door.
All right. So I'm going to take you up to December of 2014, and specifically December 17, 2014. And I'm going to ask you to take what, if anything, do you recall of an incident with Mr. Depp relating to Clive Barker?
He was the sci-fi writer that I liked. Well, fantasy sci-fi writer. I kind of had a dream project based on a book that I loved of this author. He's just a weirdo genius, artist, writer. And I had a meeting with him through another director about a piece of property he wanted to make into a movie. And I just remember I believe we were at the ECB. It was in December of 2014 when Johnny found out that I had this meeting scheduled, and was furious at me. Accused me of having this plan to sleep with this. He was mad that I was taking the meeting at this man's house, but the man was very ill, like terminally ill, and not able to leave his bed or his home. He was under home care and very ill. And the person who was introducing us explained to me how we had to meet, and I did. And that was a big problem for Johnny. At first, it was that he was concerned about my safety, and I thought that was sweet. And, you know, there is something that I thought was sweet and romantic about that. But combined with the drinking, it was not very long before I was being accused of full on having this other plan to sleep with the writer in order to get this part that I was already being, basically offered to develop. And it was just this, he switched from he was accusing me of having this ulterior motive with this director, the director having it with me, then with this writer. And the important thing I can try to get across in this moment is that nothing I said, no amount of explaining, apologizing, accepting, not accepting, agreeing to not go, nothing worked. Nothing changed. How mad he was at me and constantly telling me I had done something wrong to deserve what was happening. Until, of course, he takes it too far, hits me too hard, breaks too many things in the house, and then leaves, which was the pattern. And he would leave and not have to deal with the cleanup. He never had to deal with the cleanup. He never had to deal with the destruction or see me or the house that he had destroyed. He never had to deal with my face the next day. He would just go. I called it splitting. He just split. And eventually I'd get an apology of some kind, or I would get an offer to have him come over. He would offer to come over and talk or give me my peace or give me my goodbye. And in many ways, I found myself accepting that, knowing it was kind of false pretense because I too wanted to resolve it. I didn't want him to think I was sleeping with this sci-fi writer. I didn't want him to think that I was this slut he said I was all the time. I mean, part of me really wanted to believe that he didn't mean those things, and I wanted to get to that part of him that would tell me he didn't mean what he said and that he was acting this way because he was messed up, you know. And the cycle would repeat, I suppose.
Was there any physical violence on or around December 17, 2014?
Yes is the answer to your question. I don't really remember what happened in that fight. I remember more afterwards. I remember how apologetic he was for it. I remember him telling me he took it too far. I remember him saying he'd never do it again. And I remember wanting to get to Christmas. You know, Christmases are hard, probably for everyone. And I remember it was close enough to Christmas that I was tired. And I wanted to be in a I wanted to be in a kind, gentle, peaceful state for Christmas. I didn't want to go through a breakup at this time. I didn't want to, you know, that's what I remember of that time.
Let's bring up Defendants Exhibit 321, Michelle. And this is on 12/17/2014. Is this a text message exchange between you and Mr. Depp?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I'd like to move the admission of Defendants 321.
Any objection?
Sorry, Your Honor, just a quick minute. Your Honor, no objection.
All right, 321 in evidence. You can publish it, please.
Amber, I'm just going to turn your attention to this. This is an email exchange between you and Mr. Depp, and he says, I am truly sorry to have upset you to the degree that I have. I couldn't be more sorry for yet again ruining your day. I do, of course, take your generosity, your selflessness, your affection, and your sweet doting deeply into my heart, and I think that I've been reciprocal. Agony is never the answer to any equation or occasion, nor is rage. Please know that my apology is sincere and solid, and as stupid as it sounds, I hope your meeting with Clive Barker is excellent. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, and then you respond, thank you for your words, and you indicate you just left Betty Sue's, that's his mother?
Yes, and I then had a glass of wine with my former agent, Megan.
Okay.
That afterwards, she encouraged.
Objection, hearsay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
All right, and we can take that down. Let's bring up 325, Defendants 325, please. And this is an email exchange the following day, 12/18/2014, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, Your Honor, I'd move the admission of Defendants 325. It's already in. Oh, it's already in, Your Honor. My apologies. We'll get that figured out at lunch.
With what redactions?
It's already in,
It's
so.
been in evidence. Does anybody over there have the list of evidence that's already in evidence?
Yes.
Okay, we're making sure.
Ours indicates it is. It's in.
It's in evidence.
Without redactions, Your Honor?
It was redacted. I don't know what
Well,
it was redacted to.
The redactions don't.
That's how it is in evidence, Mr. Murphy? We can check. We'll check our copy.
Thank you. It's fine, Your Honor. We've confirmed.
Yes.
Thank you.
It can be published.
Thank you.
That's- You can't see it on your screen? All right, we'll take care of that during the break. If you could just share it there. Oh, get it? Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So this is from Mr. Depp, right? Says, it's a way, I've let it go too far, went too far. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
I always regret it when I jump, or worse, when you jump. I don't want to be conditioned to continue that behavior. Therefore, I'll put in heavy work with shrink. What is your understanding of what he's referring to with shrink?
Psychologist.
Objection calls for speculation.
Did you have an understanding of what he meant?
Yes, I knew exactly what he meant.
And what did he mean?
Shrank is shrink.
What did he call shrink?
Johnny called shrinks, meaning of psychologists, therapists, shrank.
Okay. I'm sorry for being less, for your disappointment in me, for my behavior. I'm a fucking savage. You see that?
Yes.
All right. Gonna lose that, gonna lose that. The devil is all around, right? Now, you respond to this, and of course, before you go there, and he says, I am well aware I should have been bigger at the moment, and that it will never again manifest in negative experiences. It can be done. What a killer concept to visualize. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
And you respond, I love you, I miss you already, correct?
That's right.
Right. And what, if anything, is that consistent with the cycle that you have described?
Well, the language he used after particularly violent episodes was savage, monster, devil. And so we ended up both calling his other side, the side of Johnny that would do and say unbelievably horrible things. It was very different from the other Johnny. That was, in my opinion, exact opposite. And this is typical of the apologies that I would get when he took it too far physically. I was encouraged because I thought it meant he understood that he could really hurt me. Sometimes I didn't think he understood how much he could hurt me physically, I mean. So after this, I had a visible bruise. I don't remember where, but I remember what other people, well, I can't say that, what they said, so. Anyway, and I, in these fights, would try to stand up for myself. By December 2014. I was pushing back. I'd push him off of me. I'd try to hit his hands away. I tried to always get back up, which sometimes, not sometimes, almost always made it worse. Always seemed to provoke him. But I tried. And worse, I would yell at him. I'd scream at him. I'd call him ugly names. So ashamed of the names we'd call each other. It was awful. It was awful. We both got into that pattern. It was so, I felt so angry that this was happening to me, and it just felt so unfair, It felt like nothing I could do. Felt like nothing I could do would change the sobriety patterns. Felt like nothing I could do would stand up for him, and nothing I did made him stop hitting me. Nothing. So, I tried for over a year, maybe two, of just not responding physically, not responding verbally, just staring at him. I tried to freeze. I tried to go to a different place. I would try then lashing out verbally. I would try to threaten that if he hit me again, that I would call the police. The police were called several times, but I tried to do everything. I even threatened to leave him, and tried to leave him, and nothing was working. And I think by this point in our relationship, we're both saying awful things to each other, screaming at each other, and unfortunately, when Johnny would start hitting me, he'd just win. I don't know how else to describe it.
This might be a good
Okay, that's
time for
good.
the lunch break.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll go ahead and take our lunch break at this time until 2 o'clock. Please do not discuss the case or do any outside research, okay? Thank you. All right. And again, ma'am, just don't discuss your testimony with anybody this time, okay? All right, thank you. So 2 o'clock? All right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, they're going to be breaking for an hour, so we're going to come back in an hour. Okay, so sorry we had some technical difficulties. I'm sorry you hear me coughing or whatever. Oh my God, my allergies is bothering me. We'll be back at 2 p.m. Okay, and then we'll finish up. All right, go ahead and get some lunch or something. Bye.